Hi, my name is Travis Bird. I'm the founder and owner of Arkansas Elite Welding Academy. The reason I've made this video is to help you understand how the Welding Society works and to get to the top of the Welding Society. What I consider the top will be welding on jobs such as refineries, power plants, and pipelines where your welds are required to pass X-ray. But first, I'm going to talk about money just to get your attention. In 2005, I was working in Memphis refinery. Paul Harvey came on the radio and predicted that in the next 10 years that pipe welders were going to make as much as doctors. At that time, your average physician in Arkansas was making $150,000 a year. In 2015, I worked Monday through Friday, 7 to 5. That's 50 hours a week. I made $157,000 that year. That was one of my lowest years in that 10-year stretch. When I got out of high school, I went to work for a local welding shop. The welders there were making about 18 bucks an hour, which is pretty good money to be right here at the house. But they had always told me about how much more money there was to be made if a guy knew how to weld on pipe and if he was willing to travel. So I took a chance and I went to a welding school. The welding school that I went to was taking in 90 students every 3 weeks, which meant very little one-on-one time with the instructor. The student to teacher instructor ratio was 1 instructor for every 30 students. Once they got our money, they pushed us through there like cows at the sale barn. When I got out of welding school, I lined me up a test at Lionel Refinery in El Dorado, Arkansas, which was way out of my league. I just didn't know it at the time. When I got there and started taking my test, it took those inspectors about 2 minutes to realize I was pretty green. I passed one test. I did not pass the other test, but I wouldn't take no for an answer. I borrowed a ride to get there. I didn't have the money to get home. I told them I'd take whatever job they had. I'd sweep the floors for the welders if that's what it took for me to have a job. So they gave me a job as their junk iron welder, which basically meant welding any structural they had and any pipe that wasn't going to be x-rayed. I took it upon myself on my breaks, my lunches, and any downtime we had with the help of some good welders on that job, and I continued to practice my welding. Before I left that job, I actually passed both my pipe tests and got top pay along with the rest of the other welders on that job. I continued to weld in various plants until 2007. 2007, I started pipelining, and I pipelined from 2007 to 2016, and that's when I started Arkansas Elite Welding Academy. One of the most commonly asked questions I get is, am I going to be a certified welder when I leave your school? The answer is yes. My Vice President, Josh Waymack, is a certified welding inspector at CWI. If you can pass a test for him, you will get a set of certs. But keep in mind, just because you have a set of certs or a whole suitcase full of certs doesn't necessarily mean that's going to get you a job. Most of your high-end welding jobs are going to require you to take a test for their in-house CWI to make sure you're qualified before they let you weld on their job. In this industry, you have 2 different welding societies. You have an uphill society and a downhill society. And that's just like it sounds. Your uphill welders are going to be in your plants. They're going to start at the bottom and weld to the top. They're going to be required to know how to stick weld and TIG weld. That's a combo welder. Your downhill welders are going to be on the pipeline side. They're going to start at the top and go to the bottom. It's stick welding only. Most everybody wants to be a pipeline welder. That's not going to happen for you right out of the gate. A lot of things have to take place. First off, you're going to have to get a lot of experience first. You're going to have a lot of money to get rigged up. You got to have a legit truck, legit machine, a lot of tools. If you try to poor boy it and get an older truck and an older machine, about the second time it breaks down, they're going to be getting rid of you and getting somebody with some good equipment. When you go to take a test, it's going to take those inspectors about 2 minutes to figure out your green. If they ask you to go build a riser, or a down leg, or a test head, or a pull head, or any of that stuff, you're not going to have a clue what they're talking about. They're not looking for somebody they got to babysit. They want somebody they can turn loose, somebody that's been in this for a little bit. If your ultimate goal is to be a pipeline welder, I suggest taking the same route that I took. Hire in single hand at plants first. Single hand is when you're going to hire in with just your personal tools, no overhead. At plants, they don't particularly need rig welders because they've got welding machines and electricity there versus being on the pipeline in the middle of the woods somewhere. It's so much easier getting started hiring out single hand first. A few of the reasons are there's no overhead when it comes to single hand welding. You're literally required to have your personal tools, but you can fit in a 5-gallon bucket. Once you hire in on that job, they're going to team you up with a pipe fitter. He's going to be doing all your fitting for you, setting everything up for you. Your main job is going to be to weld. Another reason, a lot of these plants don't require you to pass x-ray, so it gives you a chance to improve your welding skills while you're getting paid. At that point, you can take it upon yourself to be learning how to fit, to be building your contact list up, saving your money up to where you can put a rig together, and then work on getting on the pipeline side of things. If you take that route, then you're versatile. Most of your pipeline welders can't combo weld uphill. Most of your plant welders can't weld downhill proficiently. That's why there's 2 different welding societies there. There's an uphill society and a downhill society, 2 different welding procedures. The pipeline's busy and it's slow, just like the stock market. If you're on the pipeline, it slows down. Instead of sitting at the house drawing unemployment, you can jump over on the plant side of things. There's just as much money to be made in the plants as there is the pipeline. Am I going to teach you downhill? I do have a downhill pipeline course. There are some requirements to get into it. First thing you're going to have to do is take my uphill course. You're going to have to spend at least a year out in the field to get some experience. During that year, save your money and get you a legit truck, a legit machine, start putting you a rig together, start accumulating your tools. Once you decide you want to come to my pipeline course, I'm going to pull your transcript. I'm going to look at your attendance, your grades, your production while you were here. If I'm going to get you on the pipeline, I've got to call that welding boss and put my name on the line. That's why I handpicked those guys. I have a lot of welder helpers call me wanting to do my downhill course only. I turn those guys down. The reason I do, if you don't have a strong background in uphill, it takes me a lot longer to teach you downhill. And once again, if all you know is downhill, once the pipeline slows down, I see a lot of those guys sitting at the house in a bind for money because they're not versatile. They can't just jump over on the plant side of things. A lot of people want to know, can I just get on as a welder's helper and break out that way? The answer is yes, you can. The only downfall is it costs you a lot of money to take that route because it takes so long. If you're going to be a welder's helper, you're more than likely going to be on the pipeline. In plants, welders don't typically have helpers. I've seen a lot of guys in this last boom go be a welder's helper on the pipeline. 4 or 5 years later, when they finally broke out, everything was all good until that pipeline slowed down. Then those guys were sitting at the house because all they knew how to do was stick weld downhill. They didn't know how to weld uphill or run a TIG rig. Very important that you be versatile and be able to go to pipelines or plants depending on the economy. In my career, I never had to draw unemployment because I was always versatile. If the pipeline slowed down, I'd just jump on the plant side of things or vice versa. How much experience do I need before I go to welding school? Most of my students have little to no experience before they come to welding school. So if you've never even struck an arc before, don't be intimidated by that. If you get the opportunity while you're in high school to participate in a JAG program that's going to allow you to go to some of these community colleges, especially if they got a welding side to it, I really push my students to take that opportunity. Some of the reasons are, it's going to give you a chance to get your hands on some welding and determine if you sure enough want to do that for the rest of your career before you spend some money on a high-end welding school. Another reason is going to be the students that are winning my welding competitions every year. It's students that have been to those schools first. Also, the students that have been to those schools before they come to my school, they're the ones that are excelling through the first part of my curriculum, giving them a lot more time to spend on the high-end metals towards the end, ultimately resulting in a higher paying job once they leave school. Am I going to have to travel? I will tell you what I've done in the past versus now when it comes to traveling. I don't know what's around you as far as plant or pipeline wise, but more than likely, in order to get those big checks like you're seeing on Facebook or Instagram, you're going to have to travel. Whenever I was younger, had no tie downs, no wife, no kid. I loved traveling. I wanted to make all the money I could make. I had a goal to be set up before I had kids or a wife. That way when that day come, if I chose to, I could come home in Cadillac making that 18 bucks an hour with no house payment, no car payments, anything of that nature. If I was going to travel nowadays, I probably wouldn't pipeline. Even though that's where my passion's at, it just keeps me away from the house for too many months at a time. What I would do would be shutdowns. What a shutdown is, it's going to be at a plant. And don't get plants confused with factories. When I say plant, I'm talking about anything from a power plant, a refinery, a chemical plant. There's thousands and thousands of different types of plants, but each one of them have usually about 2 scheduled shutdowns per year. They're going to bring in welders and pipe fitters. They're going to pull out old pipe and replace it with new pipe, and it's just preventative maintenance. Those shutdowns usually last anywhere from 1 week to 6 weeks long. On these shutdowns, typically they're going to be working 7/12, which is 84 hours a week, which is what I like. If I'm going to be on the road, I'd rather be getting more bang for my buck than to be sitting in the motel room. A lot of people get into welding as a means to make some serious money to set themselves up in other ways. I've seen people get into it just to make some money to start their own business. I've seen people get in it to get land and cows and farm for a living. I've got a good friend of mine, Alex Jeffrey, used to pipeline with us all the time. He ended up going back to college. Every summer when he got out, he'd come back and hit the pipeline with us. Long story short, he got into dental school, and now he's a dentist in Destin, Florida. That's where I take my vacation every year. I go down there and see him. A lot of people will hit it hard for that first 3 or 4 years and rat hell all their money and pay their house and vehicles and stuff off. That way they only have to work 3 or 4 months out of the year. Just kind of being smart with your money and setting yourself up to where you can slow down and enjoy life a little bit. Whenever you go to work, the very first thing you're going to have to do every single time is take a weld test for these companies. And you're going to bust some tests. That's just reality. Any welder that says he's never busted a weld test is either lying to you or he hadn't took very many of them. I've seen so many welders that go out and bust their first 1 or 2 and get down and out and ashamed and quit after that. I don't care if you got to take 4 or 5 until you pass and come back to the school and brush up every time. Or if it comes down to it, if you got to sweep the floor for the welders just to get your foot in the door, do whatever you got to do to get on that first job. That's when it's going to count the most. When you show up on these jobs to test, these inspectors are going to be very judgmental. If you show up in your NASCAR welding hood or your full leather jacket, you got a big red bullseye on you, he knows exactly where you came from. I'm very particular in the gear that my guys use. Also, when you go to test, a lot of it's going to have to do with how you present yourself. There's been so many times when I went and took a weld test and I had a little spot they could have busted me on, but didn't, and it had to do with me showing up on time. Left my cell phone in the truck. I was all business. I was respectful, humble. I let these inspectors know that if I get by that test, I'm going to make them a good hand. A lot of people don't understand what's so special about pipe. The reason I preach pipe so much is that's where your money's going to be at. Most of the time, if you're welding on structural, you're going to be working harder for less money. The easiest way for me to explain that to you is if you was to fire up on a piece of structural, it's the same from start to finish. If you fire up on a piece of pipe, as you're coming around that piece of pipe, your rod angle is constantly changing, your travel speed, your arc length, the way you're manipulating that puddle due to gravity as you're coming around. There's just a lot more to it. It's going to take a lot more practice and a lot more finesse to make a good pipe welder, but I promise you it's going to be a lot more rewarding for you in the end. A lot of people ask me about is this welding school over here any good, or how about this instructor over here? I compare it to football. There's a lot of different levels in football, as is in welding. I know people that have played football for 20 years never made it to the college or the pros. Same way in welding. Just because a guy says he's been welding for 20 years doesn't necessarily mean that he's at the X-ray level. My advice, if you're going to spend the money and the time to go to a welding school, do your homework and do your research. Make sure you're going to a legit school. A lot of people will watch this video and look at our Facebook and Instagram and get fired up about welding. And they'll take all this information I've given them about doing their homework and throw it out the window and go to whichever school is closest to them, cheapest, easiest. And that's all good for that few months while you're in school, but they're missing the big picture. They're not looking at which route is going to lead them down the best path in their future, as far as when you're talking about your future spouse, your future kids, and your work career for the next 40 years. Some of the key points on doing your homework and your research before you invest in a school: if they're advertising that they're going to teach guys how to weld in refineries, power plants, and pipelines, make sure that they actually have experience in those areas. Make them show you some check stubs from those jobs. Also look at their student to teacher ratio. Most schools are anywhere from 20 to 30. We do a 1 to 10. Also do your research on their instructors. A lot of schools will try to hire students that graduated a few years ago, so they don't have to pay them near as much. Make sure that their instructors have several years experience in the areas that they're advertising. Make sure they're producing welders going to these high-end jobs consistently and not just a random one every couple of months. Just some key points to look at when you're looking for a school. We have a welding competition every year. It's for our high school seniors only. First place is going to be a full paid scholarship, and then it'll trickle down from there. Last year we gave away over $30,000. For information on that, be sure and be watching our Facebook and Instagram. We'll put the information on there several weeks before the competition. The Elite Pipe Welding course is 720 clock hours long. My day class is Monday through Friday from 8 to 4. It will take you 4.5 months to complete the course. My night class is Monday through Friday from 4:30 to 9:30. It will take you 7.5 months to complete the course. If you'd like to set up a tour, give us a phone call at 501-581-5600, or you can text us. Arkansas Elite Welding Academy is located in Central Arkansas. We're 30 minutes north of Conway on Highway 65 North. We're licensed to operate by the Arkansas Department of Higher Education. Our instructors are required to have a minimum of at least 7 years experience welding pipe on jobs that require their welds to be x-rayed. For more information, you can call or text me at 501-581-5600. You can look us up on Facebook at Arkansas Elite Welding Academy. Instagram is Arkansas Elite Welding 4943. Our website is www.arkansaseliteweldingacademy.com. Student loans are available at www.aref.org. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video.